Hey, Yoni, and welcome to Voice Notes from the Organized Homeschool. I'm so excited to have you on this podcast and to chat with you and go back and forth with our voice notes. Let's kick things off. Let's get started. Can you share a little bit about you? Share with me and anyone who's going to get a chance to listen in on this conversation, like a little bit about your homeschool, maybe how long you've been homeschooling, how many children you have, their ages, a little bit about your background, maybe if you want to share that and that's relevant, whatever you feel comfortable and called to share, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, hi. My name is Yoni. My bonus daughter gave me the name Mama Yo back in like 2013. I am almost 50 years old. I was a young mom, grew up on the south side of Chicago. I dealt with complex childhood trauma, or the ACEs, as they say, in certain social industries. And I was a teen mom. I always loved learning. I always loved to read books. I always wanted to give back to the community. And when I found out I was going to be a teen mom, I just, I went against the grain rather than to wallow in self-pity and look at it as, oh, I'll be on Section 8 food stamps for the rest of my life. I had a big dream of becoming a filmmaker. And with that, I wanted to homeschool my children and have them close to me as I went through this journey. So this journey really started about 33 years ago because my oldest son is 33. I have a 30-year-old, a 24-year-old, and my youngest, Quo, just turned 10 years old. With him, when Quentin, which is my oldest, was going to kindergarten, I went to homeschool him. I went to Borders, actually, and before Google, we had for dummies. So I went and got homeschooling for dummies. I felt so empowered that I was going to take control of my life. And then I was put into an intervention with adult mentors, my mother and sister included, telling me that homeschooling was only for those privileged. So I felt defeated, but I continued to teach my children outside of school, taking them to museums, taking them to the theater, taking them to see lectures on Black history and other topics. So I really want them to be well learned, even though it was adversity. So we fast forward to my youngest son. When he was born, I started to see him regress at around 2 years old. So I moved out of state, and when I moved to the new state, I had got him assessed, and they put him on the autism spectrum because he was not verbal and he had extreme social anxiety at the time. And I had just started a new job in manufacturing. They had put him in speech therapy, but I had missed a couple of appointments, so they kicked him off the roster. And then I said, you know what? The homeschool vibe was always there, and I brought it to the forefront. And we've been homeschooling for the past 5 years. He is verbal. He's self-taught on the keyboard. He is very funny, talented, has emotional intelligence, and a spiritual knack. We started homeschooling and cooling 5 years ago. And yeah, that's about me and my family. And I have a very supportive partner, and he doesn't always understand my ideas, but he is always there to make them come true.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, and just a huge shout out to you for all the progress that your son has made and the countless number of hours and energy and love that has gone into that. I know that's not easy, so you did that and you're doing it, and just wanted to make sure I had a chance to celebrate everything that you've done, and you're going to do so much more, so I love that. I am laughing out loud at Homeschool for Dummies. I did not even know that that book existed. That is hilarious. And I'm sorry that you didn't get the opportunity to use it then, but it sounds like you made the most of the situation. And I love what you shared because I'm sure there are some people who will listen to this and their family talk them out of it, and they can see from your story
and have some way to continue educating their child at home and providing enrichment experiences and extra work and learning. And I just think that that's a great example of how homeschooling doesn't have to be all day, every day at home. You can do it as an addition to what they're getting in public school. That's where you start. It doesn't have to be all at once. You can start with like testing it out. You can do those field trips or extra activities with your kids. So I love that. And thank you so much for sharing that. I would love to know now, like, what does a typical day look like for you? If there is such a thing as a typical day, but what does your day-to-day look like and how do you stay organized? And also tell me if you have other commitments like outside of homeschooling that you're also balancing. So what does a typical day look like? How do you stay organized with all of your different commitments? Or even if it's just homeschool, like how do you stay organized with your homeschool? Because that's still a feat, right? So I'm excited to hear.
Yes, Mama Erica, that is a great question. Okay, for the past 4.5 years, I have homeschooled while working full time, going back to school, and I'm also an advocate against human trafficking. So, what I think about is it's a learning lifestyle. So, if you incorporate learning into your lifestyle, it's less than of a chore or a duty, it's just part of your life. So, how I stay organized is I adapted STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math. So, we designate the concept for each day of the week, and you can also incorporate other subjects like reading, language arts, you physical education, personal development. So we started off in the kitchen at a table, and then my partner, he designated an area as an actual classroom where I call it a quad/pod. So I break it up into sectors. So this is his first sector, the first 5 years. Then we have a 3-year sector. And then from there, we have a 4-year sector. And the first year sector, you're developing your learning style. So I really started off as a budget up to $100 every check, where I would start off, I went to the Family Dollar Tree. There's a lot of discount bookstores, the library, museums, things online, and then creating my own curriculum because I do like layering and it's a base concept to build upon. So you may start off with your as simple as your ABCs. You can build off your ABCs with language arts, with sounds, and then blending, and then you can build off the blends, and that's going into word. That's what I call layering. And I just have an emphasis on creating a legacy of learning, developing self control by supporting classroom rules that transfer over into community. Because homeschooling and cooling is also in the community. I might go have to pay a bill or go shopping or just going to the park, going out. You have to know about who are the people in the community. So I stay organized by always decluttering, moving out of the old material, recycling, upcycling material by passing on to the youth of the community and bringing other things in, upgrading, always having a planner, index cards, sticky notes, be creative, having storage, and be able to adapt to new systems and technologies. Yeah, I forgot to talk about freedom and flexibility of homeschooling is so important. Freedom and flexibility to know that you don't have to be so hard on yourself just because you might have a bad day. The child might have a bad day. I might have a bad week where you all just slow down and focus on a mundane or just keeping the house clean, but don't do any lessons and then come back and talk about your mental health at the time and things like that. And that flexibility and also that freedom to get up and go and be present in the lesson, like the magic school bus type, is you have that freedom and then you have that flexibility to take that time off. You have to know your regression window because with child development, the regression window gets smaller and smaller. So it will be harder and harder to get them back on track once that regression window becomes too small.
Yes, I love the idea of just like making learning a lifestyle. And as someone who has a traditional education background, but worked in traditional schools, this has been something that I've had to lean into more because I'm used to teaching in a school and rarely, of course, there's field trips throughout the school year, but it's not as much as we've done for homeschooling. And also, I've had to remind myself, oh, if I need to run an errand, can be school. There's a lot to learn actually going to the grocery store, going to wherever we need to go, the post office or UPS to return something. Like there's a lot to learn from just living life, and I appreciate you calling that out because it's something that I need a reminder of a lot and try to embody more than is natural to me because of the amount of years that I spent teaching in a school. Yes to layering, that makes a lot of sense. And also this, I like how you created your homeschool space and through like the budgeting of it would be $100 each time you got paid and just putting that towards supplies and towards things you need because it can be overwhelming. And you know what? This is a great time for anyone who's just starting or even like me. I want to upgrade some of our things we have. And so not feeling like I have to do it all at once, but I can just take $100 here or $200, whatever it is, and put that into the things I want to get to upgrade our space or even just buy new supplies for the next year. So it's a great time because it's summer to get ready for the next year. And then yes to decluttering, yes to clearing the space. My environment impacts me so much that I'm like, oh my gosh, when there's clutter and there's mess, it's just hard on my brain. So I get that. I get that. So I wanted to chat a little bit more about like any challenges you might have had in homeschooling so far. So what's a big challenge that you've had and how did you overcome that? What did it look like for you in that moment? And what did you do to overcome it?
Okay, I feel like the biggest challenge is integration into the community coming from an urban setting is so many like misconceptions about urban homeschooling. Like I heard people say, oh, you're doing it, not me personally, but parents do it to hide abuse or they're just lazy. And it might be those rare cases. So I know at the beginning they were like, okay, about his social skills, seeing that he was going from social anxiety. But now I have no problem with him going into an environment and being his authentic self. Say, hey, I'm Quo. You want to do this or that? Sometimes I do tell him that bullying does occur and things. So I feel like my biggest challenge was, and no, letting people know that I had a 5-year plan. 4.5 years, I actually worked in manufacturing. But the whole time I was there, I was working towards where I can have this learning lifestyle through my website, yourbaz.net, for alternative urban mamas, and how I can get sponsors. And I'm a writer, so I was finishing up a novel. I was juggling a lot of things, and I feel like my biggest challenge was not giving myself the grace. Being a young mother and going through those challenges where you felt like you always had to come with your A game to be taken seriously if it wasn't some stereotypical. I was so hard on myself, and then now I'm looking 5 years later, and I said, if this is your lifestyle and this you make things you want it to be, I call it fluidity, everything flowing. You want to learn how to have it all flow together. Yes, parenting is a challenging task, and then you're doing homeschool and you're starting your own business. All of that is challenging, but if it's coming from a place not as I say, I attract, I don't chase. And I know when I was a younger, I was doing a lot of chasing, trying to chase these goals, trying to prove to people that I was worthy. And I always felt unfulfilled. But when I start to feel like if I embodied it, it'll everything start coming more naturally. Yeah, my biggest challenge was just integration into the community, how society looks at urban homeschooling, and just giving myself that grace.
Yes, I know there's somebody who's gonna listen in on our conversation and know 100% that like that's them right now, feeling like, how do I build community? How do I not listen to the people who are saying things that I know are not true about me, about my intentions, about my plan, my homeschool, my child, myself? And then like, how do I give myself grace when I want something so bad? How do I not try to push towards it? And how do I let things flow to me and attract things when I have such big goals and ambitions and I want the best for my child and myself, for my family, my business, all the things? And so, what did it look like for you, like on both of those pieces of challenges? Like, what do you do realistically to give yourself grace? If you maybe have a story to tell of a time when you were feeling a certain way and you pushed through and gave yourself grace, and how that ended and unfolded. And the same thing with community. I think that's huge. And I would love to know, like, how do you, similar to the grace piece, but what mindsets do you embody, that type of thing? But then how did you find community? What does your community look like, of whether it be other homeschoolers or friends that you have, that your son has, whatever that might be? I'm so curious to know.
I'm glad that you asked me about that because the number one thing is your mental health, your mind, body, and soul. I'm really into learning about your nervous system and how your brain, your body works. Because if you don't have the capacity, I was listening to a therapist on TikTok. I forget her name, but she always comes across my FYP and she has great wisdom and really straightforward. And it's about decluttering not just your space, but your mind too, so you can have the capacity to grow in the fields and let what need no longer serves you die. And I remember working in manufacturing for the last 5 years while I was building my learning lifestyle and homeschooling and cooling and making sure that quote it is thriving within his self, and I was had experiencing workplace bullying because I guess because of how I carried myself, and I was hesitant to go to therapy because I didn't want to seem okay, I'm weak and I couldn't handle it. But it came to a point where I had to make sure that my mental health is together and that I am going with my plan and my goals, and I'm not getting comfortable or just going along to get along with my community. And my community really, it really consists of my partner's family, because due to my own and my children, and I also advocate. So a lot of women leaders in the community are part of my community, and also me building my community through YourBass.net for alternative urban mamas. So I feel like my community is vast. It is online, it is offline. And then when it becomes to Quo, he is introverted, but he has a circle of friends. And as we travel more, I know that he will have a lot lasting relationships and as a stakeholder in his community, which is vast and on many platforms and facets. But yeah, how I give myself grace is you have a schedule, but you have to learn your rhythm. And I feel as mothers, and that's how I speak upon like motherhood, you find your rhythm and you stick to it. And also being an entrepreneur and being a mother or being a woman entrepreneur, I think it's a rhythm to that, because as an entrepreneur, you're providing a service that is needed to help grow the community, or you're sabotaging the community. So we ain't going to do that. So you are providing something that is going to grow the community, so that is also going to allow you to have grace to make sure that you are building something that sustains. And going back to your mental health is the most important thing. So if sometimes you have to take that mental health break, you have to get therapy, you have to journal, stretch, even if you have to relocate, you have to have that balance.
Okay, I love all of that, and love specifically that you talked about like your son being introverted and how he still has his key relationships and how you're helping him develop those as you travel more. And I think that's like such a good point, because I'm sure a lot of parents have introverted kids and they're nervous about if they homeschool, they won't have friends because they're introverted. They're also going to still be introverted if they go to school. Now, if they homeschool, you'll be able to support them in building those relationships. So I really appreciate you saying that. I love this piece about grace, because it does, or excuse me, about your mindset and starting with your mindset, because it does all start with your mindset, right? If you are in a good space, then you can do the things you want to do, versus if you're not in a good space mentally, it may be more challenging. Totally key. All right, I wanted to ask you about what you said around rhythms, because I get so many questions, especially on my TikTok videos, about people saying, I need to follow a schedule. I struggle with following a schedule. And so I'm curious to know, how did you find your rhythm? And then you mentioned staying consistent to it. How do you stay consistent? What does it look like to find your rhythm and to maintain consistency with it?
When I think about finding your rhythm, that is knowing your family's dynamics and getting to know your child and their learning styles, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and also yours. Because as the parental, taking control of your family's learning lifestyle, you have to know about what your strengths and weaknesses are. So that's how you find your rhythm. What do you, as a family, collectively care about and do well together than what you do individually? I know it sounds complex, but taking on this task of building this family crest, as I call it, it's going to make you dive deep. And then when you would start looking at getting knowledge, education, that how deep it is and how it is the responsibility of the family first. So finding your rhythm it will take diving deep. It will take creativity. It will take observation. You have to be very observant. And when it becomes a rhythm, the schedule is just a way to block off time. You might take 30 minutes on a subject one day, and one day the subject might be an all-day field trip with it. So finding a rhythm, it really just depends on how your family is growing. Because even with me, I split not into grades, but into sectors. In the first sector, it was more explorative. It's still flexible, but it was learning our styles. And now we're going to the second sector. It's going to be more challenging and disciplined. And also, Quo is growing up in age, so it's the challenges of him wanting to express more and to help more in building a curriculum and having questions and wanting to come up with his own projects. So when it comes to the rhythm, I feel as a parental, you should start to journal on the development of the children within your household and how they interact with other youth in society. So finding your rhythm is really about observation, about creativity, and about growth.
Okay, I definitely appreciate this and love how you summarize of you've got to dive deep, you've got to be able to be creative and be observant. I really think that observation piece is so key. You don't know what your rhythm's going to be unless you pay attention to what works and what doesn't work for you, for your family as a unit, like you said, and then your individuals in your family, like you said. So that I think that's just so smart. Is folks want an answer or on some of my posts, they'll be like, "How to help me? I need help with my schedule," and it's I can help you figure it out, but I can't give you what your schedule or your rhythm or your routines might be. You are going to have to come up with that. And like you hit the nail on the head is like you come up with it by, I like to think of things as life in general. And like when you're building something as experiments, like you come up with it through experimentation. You try something, you observe, just like an experiment. Like you might have a hypothesis in the beginning, and then you do it, you collect the data, that's the observation piece, and then you move left or right, or like you go to the next experiment. And so you're just going to be mostly doing a series of experiments your whole homeschooling career, because your kids are going to change, you're going to change, life is going to life. And so I love how you're like, you have to observe, and then that being creative pieces, you have to be creative to know what experiments to run, or like to come up with what experiments you're doing. I love that so much. Journaling, I definitely want to do better with this. I also am meaning to try reverse planning, which is like when you write down what actually happened, and like if that's a form of observations. You're making me think about getting back to wanting to try that again soon. So I appreciate that. So this can be related to rhythms and structures and schedule and stuff like that, or it can just be homeschooling in general. But like, what tools, what resources are really beneficial for your homeschool right now? Whether, like I said, whether it's finding the rhythm or it's just homeschooling in general. I'd love to know what tools you're using, how you're using it, tools, resources, if any, that are really standing out to you right now.
Okay, so my number one resource is I am a member of HLSDA, and it's a defense fund. It's a community. It gives you all the updates of what's going on with homeschooling all around the country and the pros and cons, what families are going through all over the country, not just with scheduling and finding your rhythm, but the practical when it comes to the laws of your state and your city, and how what some people are really fighting for that freedom that is our birthright, and we live here in America. So that is one great resource, because when you join, as little as $14 a month, and they send you a newsletter, and it just keeps you on the cusp of what's going on. Because like when you are a homeschool family, it is like your little bubble, your little oasis, your little realm you've created. And to know that within your realm is connected to this network of other realms, and to keep you, and so you can find support and be supportive of other families.
Okay, that's such a good resource. I have visited that website to see like their free. They have like details about every state and how to like what the rules or laws are in each state. But I have never talked to anybody who pays to be a part of that membership. So it's cool to hear what your experience is with it and how you are feeling like it is really beneficial. I'm definitely going to have to check that out. So I appreciate you sharing that as a resource. I'm curious to know what your biggest reflections are as a mom who is homeschooling a child who is on the spectrum. So I know we have a lot of families, and I'm actually talking to someone else who will be on the podcast too, who is also homeschooling a child with a disability. And so I know that this is like a real thing, because it's really sad, but the typical school system has a hard time truly individualizing every child's learning, and children with disabilities really need that and can thrive if they have that individual support and they have that person who, in our case, is their parent that's really advocating for them, who's ride or die for them, who's going to do what you did when your child was like regressing when he was young and now he's thriving. So what's your advice for families who are in your situation who are like, I want to homeschool, maybe they're a little nervous that they'll be able to give everything for their child? What would you say to them? What advice would you give them?
Whether you want, the biggest advice I could give is whether you want to believe it or not, you're the best expert on your brain and your child's brain. You need to find out what is all of the studies and things that have shown about how our brain works and how that factors into your environment, your upbringing as a parental. So that's why I say about diving deep. And a lot of times, and just environmental implications of when we talk about being neurodivergent and the spectrum of it all. And I constantly talk with Quo about how his brain feels and how even in science, we have been on for the past couple of years just dissecting the brain, how the brain works with your nervous system and your body. And even at him at being at 10 years old, and he said, yes, I'm different, but he does not look at himself as being, and I don't want to offend anybody, as disabled. And that's another thing as a parental. When you take responsibility of your family, what is the capabilities you have to know, and then having the stakeholders that's within your community that will actually help you when you are not able to give what is needed. And that's the part about being on a spectrum and the levels they give you. You are going to have to become the expert on all of that, especially as being a homeschool entity. You should be versed, well knowledgeable on the brain and how it works and what outside factors, what environment are you raising your child in, what environment are you in, are you just there because you're comfortable and don't want to take the needed risk to provide a different environment. And a lot of times when it comes to child development, we do not factor in environments, the environmentals, and that is what you eat, where you live, where you socialize, where you worship. It deals with culture and the culture of how we deal with the social part of when they diagnose your child being on the spectrum and meltdowns and these are things that I feel like ordinary people deal with every day, but they might not be expressive. So when it comes to that, I would tell parents, you need to become an expert. It's some parental acknowledgments that are undeniable. And I want to say about homeschool, I wouldn't say rules of homeschool. That's the state. I feel like when we talk about homeschool in general, it is a right, given right when you become a parent, that you have the right to advocate for the best situation for your family.
Such good advice. And I just hope that I did not offend you or say the wrong way when asking the question in terms of, I think I said homeschooling a child with a disability, but I hear you loud and clear, like he is not disabled. I 100% agree and hear you. And you, like you said, the last part you said is like, it's your right and you are your child's biggest advocate. What happened? There was something that happened super early in the school year. This year's our first year homeschooling. And we were at Lego Discovery and there was a school there at the same time as a bunch of us met up together as homeschoolers. And we all had tickets to like the 11 o'clock homeschool activity. I think it was a homeschool day, if I'm not remembering correctly. But we all had the 11 o'clock, say, lesson. So Lego Discovery sometimes will do like science lessons, talk about speed, inertia, all of those things. And there was a school who was very rude to the fact of they thought that they were going to have the room to themselves, just their school for the lesson. But they, Lego Discovery had also allowed us to sign up. And it was to the point where I don't know if there was enough room in this room, or like even when I can't remember all the details. I don't know why I'm like blanking, but something happened to the point where I was like, oh no, we are not. Basically, I had to stand up and advocate for the fact that our children deserve to be in this space just as much as the school does. And I literally went and was like, I need to speak to the manager and they need to make this right, because some of our kids missed this 11 o'clock class and we can't stay for the 12 o'clock. Like, we signed up for the 11 o'clock. We should have been allowed in the 11 o'clock. And they ended up giving us tickets to come back at another time because we couldn't stay for the 12. But it just reminded me when you said that, of that story, when you talked about advocating, because I just remembered that moment to be like, yep, I am now his mom and teacher and the person who's responsible for making sure that the world knows that he should be at any of the places that he wants to be in, right? And because he's a child, I'm the one who has to advocate for that and give him those opportunities. And so I 1,000% agree with that. I also love how you talked about you're going to have to learn some things, right? And I'm not saying this is a lot of people, but I think there is a little bit of this. And some people might be mad at me saying this, but I do think there's some of this idea of I'm homeschooling, I know my child best. And so then that allows me to not have to like plan, prepare, research, learn, understand how the brain works, understand how children read, because I know my kid, like, it's used as an excuse. And that's not true. Because you know your child best, you are really required to do the research to learn about how your child learns, how they best will learn, and do put in the work so that you can provide them with whatever it is that they desire, require, all of that. So good. Okay, I want to ask you if there's anything we didn't talk about that you wanted to talk about and mention. So definitely use this time now. And then if not, or even after you share that, go ahead and let us know if there's anything you have going on that you wanted to share with anyone who listens to this, or at the very least, like how we can stay in touch with you, where folks can find you if they want to chat more about anything that you said.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for allowing me to partake in something I feel that is going to flourish over time. And the biggest thing that I can say is homeschool is a privilege. I can say that. When I want to do it when I was younger, and I understood that it's a privilege to be able to. So as that teacher parental, we have to stay on a cusp, and we do. And if you know your child best and your child is saying like career wise or the things they want to do as they get older that encompass what you all want to do as a family, you have to stay on the cusp. We're in the middle of upskill and hyper change. The World Economic Forum calls this age the intelligent age. This is the age for those, I call us who are on homeschool parents, the know-it-alls of the family. We're the ones that everyone pulls on to read instructions, to find out, to organize in other family matters. So now as having a homeschool family, you can put I feel like building your family crest. So even if you say, oh, I know my child best, your child is going to grow. You have to grow with that child. You have to know the levels. You have to know what is going on in this whole big universal ecosystem. And lastly, I can be found at yourbaz.net. That's my little digi mag that I created in 2024. March 2024 was the soft launch, and it is a digimag. I am going to branch off of it, not branch off of it, but bring more people in to work upon it. But it's just my baby that I just started for alternative urban mamas. Alternative meaning going against the status quo. Urban meaning that come from an inner city or a downtown, more area or upbringing. And mamas, you could be a wolf mama or a mama bear, but you are never shook out here in life. You're gonna be optimistic. You're gonna create and you're gonna build. And I'm trying to drive traffic over to yourbaz.net, where I am providing this course for homeschooling and cooling, volume 1, and it's more for parentals to find their rhythm, their niche. Because I feel like every homeschool family is going to have that niche, that subject that the family can really rally around. So I just say, be creative, give yourself grace, and be a master builder. Thank you so much, Mama Erica.
Thank you, Mama Yo. This was so good. And come on with the alternative urban mamas who never shook out here. I felt that. And I know there are definitely moms out here who are going to connect with that. And I'm glad they have a way to connect with you and learn even more from you and your brilliance and all that you have to offer. The results are there. They're in your son thriving. So I'm so thankful for you having spent this time sharing all that you did with me. And then I'll get to share it with anyone who grabs this episode and listens. So I so appreciate you. This will be like the end of our podcast, but I hope that our voice notes will continue. I will definitely want to stay in touch. I know we are connected on TikTok, so I'm sure we'll be chatting over there too. But thank you again. Really appreciate you. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.